Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here with us today. I'm Nick Kanokia, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm very excited to talk about the ALN BIM Storm upcoming with Kimon Onuma, President of Onuma Inc., who is our Platinum organizational member here at the ALN, Building Informed Environments. And we will get into BIM and building information modeling more later in today's session. But before we do, I want to thank our other patron members, as well as all our organizational members who make this programming possible. So please reach out if you want to join up and work with us. And with that, I will say Kimon Onuma may not be here yet, so I think we're going to play a short 1-minute clip as a little prep to show you a little bit about BIM storms that have happened in the past.
Before we do that, Nick, thank you for the introduction. How are things in Lander, Wyoming today?
Good. You can see it here behind me, nice and snowy. This is not a recent photo, but it looks very similar today.
Chicago, where I am at, missed the big storm yesterday. So we got a lot of rain instead of a lot of snow. Anyway, you didn't come to hear about the weather. The BIM storm that we're starting next week is a continuation of activities that the Asset Leadership Network has been doing with Onuma, and how Onuma involves our other members in the activities. And what we're doing is showing the way to approach a culture of asset management using today's tools and processes. And Kimon Onuma has generously been showing for decades how to use new tools and processes to address your needs for a structured approach to asset management to dramatically improve your intended outcomes. Kimon, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Are you not wanting to turn on your camera
today?
Yeah,
I don't have it on. I don't have it on today. It's my off day.
Okay. So, but thanks for joining us. And thank you for starting us off on another BIM storm. This time it is intended to help higher education owners understand the tools and processes that you have been teaching about for a long time, and how that they can use those to advance their improvement to their asset management structure.
Yes.
So
maybe to add.
Yes, please.
Maybe to add something to that too. It's actually a lot of different tools that are used, especially with these modern tools that are out there. It's not really about a single solution. It's really about the connectivity between different systems. If you think of each of these application systems as assets, they need to be talking to each other to become more valuable. And that's what these BIM storms have been about for many years. How do you connect people and tools, regardless of capabilities or regardless of what tool? And more recently, in the last 5 years or so, it's actually even become a lot easier to do that than it used to be, because we used to be working on desktops, for example. Now we're mobile.
Okay. So we have started down the healthcare path, and we've got Art Curlin is watching. He's been involved since 2020, when we did a BIM storm that focused on creating temporary healthcare facilities in the parking lot of the University Health campus. And then now 2 years later, we used those same models and landed them in Ukraine to show how we could help with the rebuilding there. And the first thing is needed is healthcare facilities. And we were lucky to have the folks interested in solar microgrids involved. So they actually brought their solar microgrids to the Ukraine, and we were able to help them model it and show how to set things up. We were doing that for these temporary medical facilities. And this year, we're going to be bringing the temporary medical facilities to institution of higher education. Higher education needs buildings, but they also need healthcare facilities if it's a large enough campus. So we will then bring that to a campus in Turkey. Ankara, Turkey is the sister city of Washington, D.C., who's a big supporter of the ALN, and we'll show how they could develop their programs for teaching people. Perhaps they even set up a temporary clinic outside of one of their buildings and teach people how to work inside of these temporary clinics to help with the relief processes. So Kimon, do you want to give us a little bit of a taste of what people will be learning? First, I should say that this is a very different type of ALN Thursday at 3. Not only is Kimon's camera not on, he is only able to spend 15 minutes with us. But then if we can work it out technically, Art Curlin said he would join in, and we can have other people who will be involved talk about their involvement in the upcoming BIM storm. So that said, Kimon, is there anything you want to show that is?
Yeah, I could show a few things.
Okay.
So I'll just spend a few minutes here just kind of giving a taste of what's going to happen. But we have set up kind of an agenda, and this is on the ALN site too, as well, too, what's going to happen with these 3 sessions. So the first one's going to be introduction, then we're going to go into a workshop, these BIM storm workshops. And we've already set up, like Mike mentioned, taking the work that was previously done on the microgrids and Ukraine and moving it into Ankara. So we're on the Ankara campus here, and we have these assets, which are buildings or solar arrays or microgrid equipment kind of sitting here. And inside each of these blocks, there's information about, what's inside it, what capabilities, what size, what type of other equipment's inside it. So you can quickly set up a scenario, a planning scenario, and link to this as other information that can be brought in as well too. So the exercise would be, okay, let's create a sample working scenario. If we start saying, okay, what kind of assets do we need for this scenario, and go through the entire life cycle. We're going into planning and programming for emergency response as one example. We need to set up a temporary clinic. We have existing buildings. What are the capabilities? This is what we did on the microgrid too. How close can we bring in a 20 kilowatt array to support this with a microgrid with this clinic? How much capacity does it need to support this if there's no if the utilities go out, for example, or other scenarios like that. So we're setting up these kind of working scenarios that could be used. And these pods here are what we worked on with on the previous, the healthcare one that we did for the COVID response with Art. So Mike, is that enough? I could go deeper into each one of these, but that's essentially what
please
we're gonna
go
be
into
doing.
one of them so that we can see the information, because it's the structured approach to the information that is the important asset leadership element of this approach.
Right. So for example, as we set up these requirements, we have these, and these tools are available online. You can go in and say, I need a clinic and I need this type of space. And then if you look at each of these spaces, they have equipment in it, specific type of equipment to support that need, whether it's an operating room or a dental clinic or whatever. And then you build this up as a cart, like a shopping cart. And it gives you kind of a list of things here. And this builds a model that can then start to look like this, where you can start making decisions of where to put this equipment. And by doing this, you not only have a kind of a graphical view, but you have a database essentially of a list of things that go into this building, including capabilities. How many people can fit in this room? How much area do we have? How much electricity is it using? Is it energy efficient? All that type of analysis can start to happen. And not only within this tool, I'm showing kind of the graphical view, but there are connections to other tools. So other applications can go in here and start doing analysis, for example, creating dashboards or whatever. And that's the intent here, is how do we create, first of all, a way to capture decisions and then use those throughout the life cycle, whether we're simulating something in the future or trying to react to something that already exists, and then have different subject matter experts react to that too, whether they're engineers that give us input on engineering decisions or owners that give us requirements to say we need extra space for A, B, and C, which was the case with the COVID response BIM storm that we did, is how much clinic space do we need to support this particular area of the world. In that case was San Antonio, right, Mike?
Yes.
So you have an actual place. In this case, we put it into a location on the medical campus in Ankara. It could be anywhere, really, anywhere in the world, but you then have a very specific use case, an example to say, okay, here's a campus in Ankara. We're pulling in maps from other sources. So this is actually from Google Maps. It's a GIS layer. So we have very specific location, which is important when you're trying to plan logistics of how do we get these containers into here. And when you were doing the work with Ukraine and microgrids, we said, okay, where's the actual port facility that we can get into that's available? So you not only have a city map, you're going all the way out, you're zooming way out and say, okay, we're this far from this port right here. Is this available? That's another example. So it kind of zooms all the way out to kind of the world level or all the way down to what we were looking at in the space. And we use a lot of what something is called APIs, programming interfaces that allow us to connect to other sources of data. So for example, we didn't have to build the map in the background, it's coming from another source, but we're using it to actually geolocate, in other words, say exactly what's the latitude and longitude of this clinic for the use case of logistics or for planning or for energy analysis. For example, by knowing the location, you can know how much, what's the weather there, which is another source of data, right? So that's the kind of scenario planning that we've been doing through these exercises.
So Dan asks a real important question is what type of database is used? And let me give an answer and you can build on that. It is a web-based, secure, but open standards data source. And the idea is just like the internet is pulling information from multiple places. When you go on Travelocity, it is interfacing with United's database. It's interfacing with Hilton's database. It's interfacing with the database from Hertz rental cars, but it pulls all this information and makes it available for the decision maker. Kimon, is there a more technical answer?
No, that's right. Yeah, it could be multiple sources too. So for example, this is pulling from a database that says how big is this space, but we also have other owners that we've been working with that have their own database and say, here there are the rules that we have for our healthcare facility. We need this type of equipment in this space. So it's merging information together in real time. And that's another thing with the internet today and with our mobile devices, it's no longer, well, we need to go find that spreadsheet that's sitting on somebody's desktop and pull it in here, even though we can do that as well too. That's a valid workflow. So at the very simplest level, we can actually use an Excel table. It could just be an Excel table that we import in and say, how big do spaces need to be? That's a starting point. But if there's a source database that an owner has, for example, if that hospital in Ankara has a database to say, here are all the assets that we have, the type of assets that we have the need in a hospital, then we can pull from that as well too. And I describe it a lot of times, like when you go to Uber and call a ride, it actually is pulling from many different sources. It's pulling from the satellite system that says where you are. It's pulling from the map that shows you where you are on the map, and it's connecting to the Uber list of drivers that are available and how much they cost and all that. So it's really merging a lot of things together, but the end user doesn't even realize where the source is. It's basically, I want to ride.
So Dan's asking if it interfaces with AutoCAD and Revit, and yes, that is the case. But Dan, more likely you would do this work in this nimble software, determine what your plan is going to look like, and then export it into Revit for further detailed work.
Right, that's one workflow. You could start in Revit and bring it in here too as well too. But yeah, this is all BIM, building information modeling, which is graphics and data connected to it. And we found over the years too that once you have a graphic, for example, is going back to this map again. If you didn't have this map, you would have to start describing the street address and how you get to here and everything. But here it's absolute, basically it knows exactly where it is. So it kind of starts the discussion much earlier. And then in the background, each of these blocks here is a Revit model if we wanted to export this into Revit and connect to Revit. So we'll go more into detail in the workshops, right, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. And Kimon, I already let people know that you're not able to stay with us for this whole program, but if Art can send us a note, if he's available, he's willing to talk about this from the owner's perspective. And I've been working with Art. So Kimon, is there anything else you want to say before you sign off?
I guess the message here is you don't have to be a technical expert to be involved in these workshops. And that's kind of the point we're trying to make. It takes a lot of people with expertise about and knowledge about different things. And just like the Uber example I gave, the person that calls an Uber ride does not have to know how to put the engine together, but they want a car that works so they can get across town. That's what these exercises are. How do we collaborate and get decisions made from different users and capture them in a repeatable way?
And these are just snapshot exercises to help people understand what is possible for structuring their data using current tools and processes so that you can feed into a structured approach to asset management like Art has established. And Kimon has shared, we'll make this public.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to send this to everybody. There's a website for understanding more. But Nick, if you can make Art a panelist, we'll say goodbye to Kimon, and we hope that next Wednesday is a camera day and we get to see you while we're doing the BIM storm next week. But thank you for taking time out of your busy day to give us a little overview of what's happening.
All right, thank you very much.
Mike, I promoted Art and it looks like he's joined. We can see if it'll work.
We'll see how it goes. So what Kimon shows is, hi Art. What Kimon shows is kind of overwhelming because it's the new tools and processes and it moves fast. That's the whole point of it. We can reduce time and increase quality of our planning, and that information from the planning stage is retained. Art, how important is the information element of a structured approach to asset management?
It's critical. My involvement with the BIM storm was to set up that remote hospital, and it was specifically using those pods. And I thought that was an incredible demonstration. I'm sorry if you hear some background noise. I'm in a warehouse environment.
If it gets noisy, Art, you can just go mute and I will speak for you.
Okay.
In addition to Art providing an owner's perspective in the upcoming BIM storm, a healthcare owner's perspective, he's also got a class that's going to be offered through the National Property Managers Association, and it is offered on April 18th, and it's a 6 hours. Is it 6 hour course?
Full day.
8 hour class, and it goes into the details of a healthcare asset management system. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this class is going to offer people some information that they're just not going to, they can't get anywhere else. It's based on my experiences of 30 years in accounting and property management. And I will be able to teach folks how to engage their entire organization in asset management, how to gain leadership support for their asset management efforts, and just how to break down silos between departments, how to just organize what departments are already doing, and form a encompassing centralized way to manage personal property of any asset intensive organization.
Excellent. So the information that is generated through these scenario planning sessions, how does that impact the system that you're setting up?
Well, I can only speak to the part that I was involved with, that I was so impressed with, and that is those emergency pods where, I mean, you have to know how you want those pods configured. You need to know that the equipment, what equipment is in them, if they're in need of calibration, servicing, if even to the point where when you're finished, has everything been decontaminated. So it's very critical to know everything there is to know about the assets, including the pods themselves, and where they're going, where they've been. I mean, are they going into a remote area where there's no internet and you need to bring your own network infrastructure with you? There's just so much you need to know in depending on the environment.
Excellent. Thank you for mentioning that, because what we're doing is showing how planning for earthquake relief might be assisted through this approach to asset management. And we have a new relationship with the United Nations. So we have picked we've decided that we're going to donate money to a United Nations fund. And the people who want to join for special classes, there'll be 3 free classes, but if anybody's interested in getting into the actual earthquake relief planning process, they can join and make a donation to a relief fund that we pick as a group. Now, Mott McDonald, Mildred Chua Ulger, works for the engineering firm Mott McDonald. She is a member of the ALN board of directors, and she is married to a man who has who grew up in Turkey. Mildred has visited Turkey often. This is a emotional issue for her, and she wants to support it. Also, others at Mott McDonald are from Turkey, and they're already over there doing work, assessing what need there is. And we're going to be involving them and make this virtual exercise as real and as helpful as we possibly can to get people to understand improved ways to get better quality, more work done in less time. So Nick has been putting up the links to the course that Art is offering, and also to our registration page. There's a schedule that you can understand more about what's going on. So Art, if someone is involved in emergency planning, what might they learn from this type of activity?
Well, I kind of look at it as in terms of sports. You know, there's plays, like let's take football, for example, and the plays are drawn up on the chalkboard, and before they're ever practiced on the field. So I think this is kind of relates to that. You get a chance to see what the big picture looks like, how if everyone does their job, how it should work on paper. And then if it doesn't, then you have a reference point where you can make some adjustments quickly, and then try it again, and hopefully it works, you know, better the second time around.
Excellent. Yes, the team analogy is a good one. And it is that, the sketch on the chalkboard. Now, your course will go into more detail. So if people like the things that you're saying in the BIM storm, then they might want to go into more detail. What are some of the details that they'll be learning in the extensive course with you?
So they'll be learning how everything that is related to a personal property physically has financial impacts. And so I'll take them through a life cycle of property from the acquisition through the disposal, on all the activities in between, detailed processes and procedures, so that all different departments know what each other are doing, and they work together to get the most value out of those investments.
Okay, and I want to spend just a second explaining that although this is for higher education, and we're setting up an ALN Higher Education Asset Leadership Board, we picked a healthcare facility and healthcare personal property to build on what we've already have established and to be able to lean towards earthquake relief. And the ALN Higher Education Asset Leadership Board will have two main focuses to start with. Once it gets rolling, it can expand, but we want to inform the leaders of institutions that a structured approach to asset management will be helpful for their own operation and contribute to their mission success. And then the second element is we want to create template courses, curriculum for higher education to more rapidly establish a training modules for their students or for continuing education students. So even though this is focused on healthcare facility, it is really intended for higher education. And in Ankara, we have identified a couple of universities that are focused on medical education. And it is presumable that they might want to set up something that would teach their students how to work in these modules if there's going to be increased need for healthcare service in Eastern Turkey, which there is. So Nick, before you sign us out, do you want to make a comment about your impressions of the BIM storms? You've been involved with them since before 2020, actually, but
Yeah, just to say it's been great to hear from Kimon and Art, kind of the subject matter experts. But one of the things I really like about both of these worlds is that they're applicable to any industry and applicable to anyone's work, whether they're in leadership at an organization or somewhere else, because it is that big picture view of drawing a line from the mission to the daily operations and to the management of the structured management of all the assets that an organization has, both tangible and intangible, like processes and in data around facilities and personal property. So that's the big thing for me, is that it involves kind of all relevant stakeholders and gives people a voice, hopefully early on, so that you don't have to address issues that come up later because you didn't ask.
thank you, Nick. And while you're calling up the closing slides, I'd just like to invite anyone whose organization is interested in providing content or input to contact us, and we can work you into the BIM storm processes. And actually with Mott McDonald, they might even have a special session that's focused on their area of interest for earthquake relief. We can do the same thing for other organizations.
Okay, and just want to thank Kimon Onuma for his time today. And,
There's his picture.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't get to see Kimon, so here he is. President of Onuma Inc., which is our ALN Platinum organizational member. Big thank you for that and for the continued involvement in these BIM storms. And as well, thank you to our other patron members. So important to have that level of support for the Asset Leadership Network. Thank you to all our organizational members, and please reach out if you're interested in working with us and becoming an organizational member at any level.
Thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you Wednesday, and if not, next Thursday at 3. Bye for now.